Yes, hello everybody. How are you guys doing tonight? I am talking about a very important topic tonight about a city that been going viral on Instagram and social media, and now all of America seems like they're talking about what's happening in Gary, Indiana, and we're in full disclosure. Gary isn't just a story for me. Gary is a place that raised me. So this is a topic that I am just really excited about talking about. And when we start seeing images about my hometown sitting in darkness, all the families without electricity, businesses are struggling, people are losing all of their food, schools are disrupted, residents are wondering when help is coming, when the lights are coming back on, full lights back on for the whole service area. I just wasn't watching as a therapist because I have family members still there. My own mom lives there, and so she's staying at my house until the street lights are back on, so to speak. And so it gets to be very complicated because I start thinking about Gary as a city and the history of Gary. U.S. Steel founded that city a very, very long time ago, the early 1900s. And I've been diving into it. I found that at its height, Gary Works employed 30,000 people at one point, and Gary grew into Indiana's second largest city. And by the way, if you lived in Gary back in the 80s when I grew up in Gary, and you had a parent who worked for Gary Works, the steel mill, you were considered pretty wealthy. I mean, you had a two-car garage, you could send your children to college. Everything was really booming in that city. And so then the economic engine began disappearing. We had automation, we have foreign competition, deindustrialization, and all of these massive steel mill layoffs. And that devastated this entire city. And jobs disappeared from a community. And we sometimes talk about it as though people simply lost their paychecks. And communities lose much more than just paychecks. They were losing businesses, they were losing homeowners, tax revenue, they lost resources for schools. I think right now there's only one high school in the whole city. At one point, there was much more than that. Roads, public safety, and infrastructure began to crumble. Eventually, they began losing something psychological, and that's a sense that somebody is coming. Is somebody coming to help you when you need help? Gary's story is also political. And I was looking this up today. In 1967, Gary elected Richard Gordon Hatcher, and that was the first Black mayor of a major American city. That was in 1972. Gary hosted the National Black Political Convention. Thousands of Black leaders and activists gathered in the city of Gary, and that briefly became one of the centers of Black political power in America. But just as in my days, when you move away from Gary and you go to college and you come back to Gary, it's always because something happened to you that wasn't necessarily great. It's like you came back to Gary, girl, what happened to you? Something bad happened. And, the white flight, declining in industry, shrinking tax revenues, decades of disinvestment. And then we had the crack epidemic. Y'all know that in the 80s, addiction, violence, family disruption, mass incarceration, all of these things that's very devastating for an entire community of people, of which I am very, very closely tied to. So when you hear about a major storm that hits Gary, August 11, I believe, this year, thousands of people remain without electricity. More than a week later now, they are restoring, because I have a cousin who told me that her electricity was just back on, and some other people tell me this trickling on, but it's very, very at a very slow pace. We cannot look at this event in isolation. And because Garry didn't enter the storm yesterday. Garry entered a storm in carrying this massive history. And now there's another layer to the story, the internet. Lord have mercy. People, the internet is never going to be a complicated situation, always going to be a complicated situation. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories circulating online. Y'all know I have been diving into the conspiracy theories, suggesting that what's happening in Garry isn't simply about storm damage. Hey, everybody, I see y'all in the chat. How you doing? Let me know what you think about these conspiracy theories. People are asking questions about the land. Are they talking about redevelopment? Are they talking about data centers? And even some suggesting that prolonged infrastructure failures ultimately make distressed property easier for powerful interests to acquire. And now I want to be clear with you guys. These are just conspiracy theories. We don't know for certain. It's alleged. Do I have to say that, everybody? Allegedly. So these are allegedly, these things are happening that's floating around. And what's most important also in existence of these theories is what I want to talk about today, and that is the psychological impact. Because people don't just develop institutional distrust in a vacuum. I think a community like Garry, Indiana has experienced generations of economic abandonment by the state, racial inequality, all the political battles, corporate power, and a promise of revitalization. Very excited about seeing what the mayor has to say about these very exciting ideas of having the Bears stadium in the area and all of this talk. And it's created a distrust among a community. And that's where I want to enter this conversation as a therapist, because what happens psychologically when you have been without power for 10, 11, 12 days? What happens when you can throw all of your food? I can't even imagine throwing all of my food in the trash and barely can afford food in the first place. You're worried about, I was worried about my elderly mother, worried about your child's schools being closed, sleeping in the heat. I can't even imagine not being able to take showers, having to boil your water because there's issues with water safety, when every sound outside of your house is suddenly getting your attention, and your nervous system is saying, okay, we have to be careful here, and are we safe? And when the answer continues to feel very, very uncertain, I think the body can move into this survivor mode, hypervigilance, irritation, fear, lots of anger I'm seeing online, can't sleep at night, difficulty concentrating, distrust of authorities. And for people who've already lived through poverty, community violence, addiction, all of this loss, this can make things worse. So tonight we are going beyond when are they going to put the lights back on? We are asking tonight, what happens to people when they begin to believe that nobody is coming? And what does healing look like for a community that has demonstrated extraordinary resilience? It was so beautiful to see Black people all come together and issue out food, and all of the love is just so beautiful, from professional people down to famous people to just all of us as just regular people. And I just think it is such beauty. I couldn't have this conversation alone, everybody. Joining me tonight, I'm so excited, is my very new friend. Y'all know I love my therapist friend. Listen, let me just explain something to you guys. As a therapist, you're very lonely because you're just sitting in this room by yourself, and you need to have a community of therapists that you can be friends with. And just a few weeks ago, my husband met this gentleman. His name is Garry Graham, and he's a therapist. And I was just like, yes. So my husband's setting me up on play dates with other therapists because he knows. We have Garry talking about Garry. So I don't know. I had to say something about that name. But Garry is a licensed, let me bring him up. Let's everybody give him a digital round of applause to
Thank
Garry.
you. Thank you.
Yes, Garry,
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself to everybody.
I am Garry Graham, Garry with 2 R's, and I am from New York City. And yeah, I met your husband about 3 weeks ago. And we had a wonderful conversation. He said, my wife is a therapist. You seem like the real deal. And, you know,
Yeah.
for any man to hook up professionally with their wife, you know, not only that you're only stable in your own relationship, because I know you guys have something going on there, but the last thing he said to me was like, don't go ghost my wife. And I was like, I'm not trying to ghost anybody. I'm trying to, you know, raise my profile, do what's good. Dr. Alicia, I can't thank you enough, because during our production meetings, you never talked about that you were from Garry. And that just shows you how insightful you are, because sometimes as therapists, we don't get the whole story. And, you know, you could have picked anybody to come and talk about this. And so you've given some history behind this, and I'm prepared to talk to you, because therapists needs therapists, and we talk a different way. And I'll be a little transparent. I'm going through my stuff now, and I have to talk to another therapist too. But when you talk about people of color, Black people who built cars in this country, down the road of South Bend is where the Bendix Corp was. And then you said other things that made sense. The bears coming in. You know, is it only conspiracy theory? Are they testing? My family's from Jamaica, and people wonder, like, the whole grid went out, and now they're trying these new AI, futuristic George Jetson stuff in that area to make it comparable. So, as I said, you could have picked anybody. You picked me. We got along really well, and hopefully this will be the first of many hard conversations we do, because here's the thing that a lot of people don't know. We have the answers. And so I'm going to open up and let everybody, let your audience know the first answer that you did, Doc, was have your mother come live with you, because she is in a space where she can't move on. For some reason, when we had COVID, or when we had 9/11, or when we had a couple of blackouts, people don't want to leave their house. And I get that, right? But we have to survive physically first before we survive mentally. Take it all in, because home is going to be there. So the number one thing I'll tell you, do what Dr. Watkins has done. Bring your family over. I'm not trying to say stay till Christmas now. I'm just trying to tell you, like, we got to survive. The meat is going to rot out. Whatever they're going to take, is they're going to take for it. At the end of the day, Indiana, the government's going to pay for it. They will pay for it. It'll take some time. So I was very happy when you said that you brought your mother in. Not your second and your third cousins or your college roommate. That's for their family to take care of. So I'm very happy to hear that. So that's number one.
Yeah, you know, I did invite my cousins. I told them all they wanted to come. They can come. So I did invite.
No,
I
not
had
your
another
first
cousin
cousins,
that came.
your second cousins, those who try to
That
play.
stayed. So I did open my house up, because we're in and out. You know, Boyce and I are all over the place,
Right.
and so
That's
we definitely had space for anybody who wanted air conditioning, wanted to take a shower, and wanted to eat a good meal. So I was definitely open to sharing my space. But thank you for. I really appreciate you starting, and I want to welcome you here. And I'm just curious, like you brought up some really good points. I think that, like, when you look at this story through the lens of trauma and human behavior, I'm just wondering, like, what do you think is happening psychologically to a people who feel as if people have let them down once again to survive on their own? Like, what do you think how does that what impact do you think that has on a person?
a generational impact.
Mhm.
When I thought of Garry, I thought of two cities. I thought of Flint, Michigan,
Yes.
and I thought of Louisiana, Katrina. And we were younger adults then, and Flint, Michigan was just around the corner. Midwest, steel town, car town, and with what's going on lately, it looks like, let me be very careful, that the government has left us on the bottom of the barrel to survive for ourselves. This is not a bootstrap incident, right? This is whatever disaster goes on, we pour in, take care of our people, no matter who they are. And there was a time in this country for generally that if something happened terrible, that you would get some aid, Red Cross, some quiet, small uh, government agencies. But when I see, people are helpless, and then, Doc, it also is not generational. It makes me realize my assessment. Like, you talked about you and boys can go out, right? I'm in a place now, like I'll be very transparent. I talked to you this morning, right? And I'm here at my mother's house in Maryland, right? I can do that, but there's people that cannot do that, right? And so we have a chance to reassess ourselves and not put all our faith in people we have elected.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I love that you bring up Flint, Michigan, and Katrina with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. I mean, I just really see it as institutional betrayal and a
Oh,
collective trauma that people experience. It was just really kind of fascinating to see these crises and to feel so hopeless
mhm,
and just to kind of think like, um, these things don't exist in isolation. I mean, we've seen all of the versions of this before. And, when images of predominantly Black people are waiting for basic assistance
mhm,
and becoming part of our national consciousness, people are watching this. And I'm tethered to people, Black people
mhm.
who look like me. And so just being as empathetic as I am, I'm affected by
Of course you
this,
are.
deeply. Psychologically, there's like a common thread. What happens when people repeatedly experience systems they depend on as absent, inadequate, unresponsive to certain groups of people during moments of such vulnerability and trauma, the trauma of that storm. It was hurricane, never seen before, hurricane level storm.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's just just that waiting for people to kind of believe you for your humanity
mhm,
and for resources, waiting for your neighborhood to receive the urgency you believe
mhm.
that another community would have received if it looked different, you
Absolutely.
know? And after going through experiences like that and to seeing and living vicariously through that,
Mhm,
distrust for me psychologically is a protective mechanism. I teach this class about I'm teaching a research class here in the fall,
mhm.
and part of that research class we talk about healthy paranoia that Black people have with researchers for a good reason because of Tuskegee
Excellent.
syphilis experience. By the way, I was born in Tuskegee.
Get out.
I was born in that hospital, John Andrews Hospital in Tuskegee, Alabama, ground zero of the Tuskegee syphilis experience. You
Man.
talk about environmental racism and
Mhm,
and all of that, and medical racism, and then we wonder why Black people don't trust.
mhm.
Like, of course we don't trust. Not trusting is a survival mechanism. I don't know from you as a therapist, I'm curious about what makes a community psychologically ready to believe again.
Again, there are people like there are a lot of people out there. Let's take mental health for instance, right? Like you asked, right? I am so happy for Black people to start taking their mental health seriously. So I'll give you a case in point. I was talking to somebody about FMLA. You should know what FMLA is. And basically, it's a leave for your family or whatever. So, like, Doc, you could take FMLA because of what happened in Garry, Indiana, because you got to take care of your mother, right? You don't have to put any great hoops or whatever. She is in a distressed space. So, with that, I was telling the person, if you wanted to get a doctor's note from me, I can do that. It's like, Mr. Graham, could you hook me up? It's like, whoa, it's not a hookup. It's a right
Yeah.
that you can get that. She said, I didn't know that. I said, look, if you're going to work on a Monday and Tuesday and you feel like knocking out somebody, I suggest that you give me a call because you see me weekly or bi-weekly, just like you see a doctor, and tone it down a little bit, right? You have air conditioning. You have a hot shower, right? Some of those people have to go back to work, and I could tell you some of those people in Garry are going to work, and maybe may not be in the circumference of their home, but they probably go out to another county. And you got to remind me, and I'm gonna put it on my page and your page. I got a picture of Garry, Indiana, where it's all Black, and the outskirts has light. So back to what it is that since COVID, by the grace of God, He has done this. He has taught us to utilize mental health. And the unfortunate people who are passing away in Hollywood, people we know personally, you get an opportunity to take care of yourself. So it is there. Programs like this and your followers would share it, and we can talk about it, and it's real. That paranoia, that research paranoia that you talk about is an extra layer of what we think of before we go to the doctor. Are they giving us the right medication? Are they giving us the right things or the right regiment to follow through? And so you're right on point with that. But like I said, number one, we talked about your empathy, and you have done that. And number two, let's not fool ourselves. We are now into a place that is generational. So me and you, we're still young people, right? We have seen Katrina again, and we have seen Flint, Michigan, and now we're seeing this. And all of this is weaved into each other. And so after this is done, this is why we have the internet. This is why we should be always posting pictures. This is why we should be always putting pressure on our people we elect and keep on asking for answers. And it works.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember even like Hurricane Katrina, I had just like a month before Hurricane Katrina impacted New Orleans. I was in New Orleans and I had a ball. I ate the best food. I danced. It was just so beautiful. And I just remember sitting on my bedroom floor watching it on television. And I'm going to tell you, Garry, there were tears just strolling down my face. It was just so sad. And believe it or not, it was the Kanye West that just like came on out and said, George Bush doesn't care about Black people. And I was
straight
like,
out.
Oh my God, it felt so good for him to say that. Yeah.
And here it is, right? For some of us that God has blessed us to go around. My wife did a stint in Opelousas. I would say that right, Louisiana. Louisiana is a wonderful, just not New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
Louisiana is a wonderful place. They don't pick there to go to the Essence Fest for nothing, right? The food, the everything. And anytime something like that happens, Doc, it takes away from our culture, our rich Black culture, that it leads with Katrina instead of the good food and the dancing and the connection. And I go back to Boyce and I connected and we rose up. right? And this is 4 weeks ago, right? But you know, we don't get that chance because we're busy slaying dragons in Garry, Indiana, and throwing away food. Now, there's somebody that needed to go to a conference. This is a school year. Somebody was supposed to go to school, maybe to Tuskegee, University of Chicago was supposed to start law school, and that had to be delayed because somebody didn't want to put the lights on. Think about it. We're not only talking about all those people who's been there for generations. There's somebody that has to wait another year to get on their feet that didn't have a Dr. Watkins to go to, didn't have an aunt in New York City, or didn't have an aunt to go to Atlanta to live in Morehouse and say, yo, you take care of yourself. And how could you study? So so all of those affect us, all of those things.
Oh,
And
I mean,
I bet you the bill
bring
collectors are still coming.
Oh God, they are still coming. I bet that NIPSCO bill is still coming on in. Hey, everybody, welcome. I am here today with Garry Graham, and our topic is it's bigger than a blackout. We're talking about the psychological toll on Garry, Indiana. We're comparing it to other cities, and we've been talking about the Tuskegee Syphilis City where I was born, Garry, Indiana, where I grew up. And believe it or not, I have my grandma, my dad's side of the family. They're all from the New Orleans, Pascagoula, Mississippi area, and they were devastated by Hurricane Katrina. And they were my cousin Jerry. He was a Vietnam War veteran, so he talked about. And I know he doesn't care if I share this, but he talked about how Hurricane Katrina, he had PTSD from Vietnam and he was doing really well, but something like Hurricane Katrina really set him back.
Brings that back.
And it just re-traumatized him, and he was already carrying this trauma. So it's almost like a build up of this trauma, and then something like this natural disaster could ignite that. And I love what you're talking about, Garry, about using some of these systems that are put in place to help you. FMLA, not enough Black people take advantage of that.
Yep.
And I really do think that it's okay to say, I'm not okay right now. I don't have to push through every single time something happens. And so, I'm glad that you brought that out. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of these conspiracy theories. I mean, they've been circulating around, and this is allegedly, about Garry's, land redevelopment, very powerful interest can benefit from that area. By the way, in case people don't know, that Garry, Indiana is in a very, very interesting geographical location because you have the lakefront. I live where my mom lives is 2 blocks from the beach. Like you can walk two blocks down and you're right there at Miller Beach. It is a beautiful beach, well taken care of. You have a national forest there. National Forest Preserve right there in Garry. And it's a beautiful land that is highly sought after. And so, whether those theories are true or not, what level of suspicion tells us about institutional betrayal and why some communities really stop trusting, like the trust there?
So I'm going to give you 2 examples that's going to tie us together. So my mom and dad are born in Jamaica. And when they were growing up, you could go to any beach, anytime, any place. There are no public beaches in Jamaica because, just like you said, that lakefront in Garry, Indiana, and that is the stop before you go to Chicago on Amtrak. The fact that the Bears are interested in coming over from Illinois to Garry, Indiana. I'm from Brooklyn, and I saw Brooklyn change from when Biggie was rapping on the corner to now the very apartment he lives in is 3 times as much. So urban development is in play. And one of the ways to get people out is to prolong the disaster. So Garry, Indiana has become prime real estate. And just like New Orleans, bounced back. And even though I'm a football fan, I thought it was ironic that the Saints won the Super Bowl maybe a year or two later. That's part of the revitalization. Uh,
Mhm.
the Chicago Bears, just like in New York, we have the New York Giants and the New York Jets, but they actually play in New Jersey, real estate. So
Ah,
yeah, right across. So Gary, Indiana is fertile ground,
yes.
real estate developers. Not
And
to
and the land is so cheap. Like you can buy a house there for little or nothing compared to what normal houses cost. And
mention.
and I go down to the Miller Beach area. If anybody's ever been to Miller Beach area, it is absolutely wonderful to be there in the summer. You would not recognize. It is like there's like restaurants down there with great food. There's a live band playing, and some of the live band is renovation is there. I know that there's a initiative to redo all of the lakefront. That's happening right now in Miller Beach area. So I mean, it is, and you're just, by the way, when you talked about the Amtrak to Chicago, if you got on the Amtrak,
Mhm.
you'll be in downtown Chicago in 20 minutes from
Right.
Garry,
Yeah. Yep.
paying little or nothing on Amtrak. So
Yep.
it is the best, place to commute. It's so convenient of a commute that, it's the best kept
It's
secret
perfect.
almost. Yeah.
Almost perfect. So
Hmm.
I'm with you on this. And part of it is that when we use the term Midwest, we do not think of people of color.
Hmm.
And when we talk about voting blocks, we don't think of people of color. But those places like Detroit, Chicago, South Bend, Gary, Indiana, there's a place that I frequented a lot. It's called Elkhart, Indiana.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
are places that goes across the North Ridge of the United States, going into Ohio and Cleveland. There's the Amtrak comes through all of those places, and we, as a people, have built those, and they're systematically taking that back from us. The crack epidemic did not beat us down, right?
No.
The lack of food and taking away like Bendix, which supplies Pontiac, and the pieces of the cars, they took that away from us, and now they're trying to take us away by turning out the lights. Girl, they got to do something better than that to hurt us, because now that we have found mental health, and there was a time that I think that people of color and black people didn't take care of each other, but we now are all taking care of each other. Like, girl, you don't have to fight for FMLA. You don't have to fight for a doctor's note. That's your right. You know,
And then
that's
some of
your
the
right.
problems is that there's not enough Black therapists out there to help validate their really lived experience. And I think that's the issue. I mean, the biases, and it could be very well-meaning people, but you still have biases. Everybody has a bias. And the thing with training people how to become therapists is understanding what your biases are,
Mhm.
just even thinking about how you might be biased in any way. And that has an impact on the amount of power, because as a therapist, you have a lot of power.
Yes,
You can
you do.
write that FMLA letter, or you cannot write it.
Yep.
You have power.
Exactly. Exactly. Or disabilities. But I found this very intriguing when I started doing FMLA and writing doctor's notes. Nobody fools with it. I
Mhm.
and I'll
Yeah,
tell
because
you.
legally you
Right.
get into some
But
legal
the,
issues.
the the thing about it that I love is, and I'll tell you a quick story. It's
Mhm.
just like, so if obviously my name is spelled with two R's, and then I get these fantastic people that will look me up in the state, try to find me, and like, oh, you're not licensed, or you're not qualified, or what have you. And I was like, okay. And I was like, did you spell my name with two R's? And then when you spell it, it'll pull up.
Ah,
And I was like, you need to realize there's some of us that not only went to school, but we toiled all of those supervision hours we had to do, and all of those people we had to go through, and then we have to be relicensed again every 3 or 4 years. and then we have to have insurance under that. You cannot get hired until you have all of those. And then you walk into a room, Doc, and this is my favorite thing, and the people who are hurting is Black people and people of color. And they see you, and once they kind of like poke you and say, oh, you're a real therapist, then we talk about real stuff. Like real stuff. There's stuff that's in the book, and then there's stuff right here. And just like you talked about, right? This is generational stuff. This is like my mom and dad came from Alabama to come to South Bend or Garry to work in the factory so I could get a 2 garage house. And every summer we'll go to Mississippi and I learn how to quilt, catfish, and come back into September. And it built a whole economy for us to the point that people was like, oh, hold on a hot second now. Hold on a hot second. So I'm with the conspiracy theory. I'm watching the Chicago Bears thing very closely. The next, hopefully, get to talk about, I really wanted to talk about the NIPSCO thing. That they should, whoever's the CEO just need to resign. Bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, and not even just the conspiracy theories, but like, and you don't have to believe all of them, and there's probably some legitimacy in many of them, but like, you have to understand what's happening is that we're using critical thinking skills, and we're questioning the official explanation. Right. We're understanding, and rightfully so, and by the way, it was a therapist that exposed the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. So there were some wonderful, beautiful mental health professionals that have worked on a macro level and meso level to make sure that interventions are done, and that we get down to the bottom of things, and that these injustices are exposed and spoken about and talked about and learned about. And what a wonderful thing. Like in my research class, I talk about my advanced research class. Every student in that class has to read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Yes.
How many of you guys, let me know in the chat, put a yes in the chat if you've heard of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Yes. That is what every student in my class, and not only do they have to read it, but they have to engage in online discussions about that book, in addition to learning about research. And we talk about racism in research and implicit bias in research. Yes, Bruce. Hey, Bruce. Bruce has heard of that. So that entire book has to be read in my class. And then, we learn about, I'm teaching the first half of the research class this semester where they have to write their research proposal. You remember that, Garry?
Yeah.
And they write their research proposal.
You're giving me shivers.
Shivers, right? I'm instilling fear in them. But yeah, part of that, they have to understand about syphilis, Tuskegee syphilis experiment, and that it was a social worker that exposed that whole thing, and how we have to
know that. I had no idea. Look,
Simon, his name is Simon. I think his name, I can't remember his last name.
We'll find it. Somebody's going to call
Peter
us out.
Buxton?
Somebody's going to call us out online, and they say, they'll find it for us.
They'll find it. Peter Buxton, I think that's his name. He is the social worker, and he could not get a major newspaper to print the story. He had to keep advocating and talking about it, and just putting a lot of pressure on people. Hey, you've got to post this story. You've got to print it, and no newspaper. Eventually, I think the New York Times, they didn't really want to do it, but the New York Times eventually posted the story. So, these things are done with brave people speaking up, and really, I really do. I think it takes, I hope it happens, but I'm ready for the uprising.
It will.
I'm ready for us to speak truth to power. And
I just think the most powerful thing
we don't have control, and it is time for us to take our control back.
I think listen to your statement on it, and this is the therapist coming out of me, right? You talked about the social worker getting the New York Times, and you said to post. That
really print.
right, but no, feel me. This is to let you know exactly where you are as the brilliant therapist that you are, right? And we kind of said it, right? So back then there was probably like one or two outlets, right? New York Times, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, Washington Post, right? And then you said, and you used the term post. If we take our doom scrolling and our laughter and our Club Shay Shay, ain't nothing wrong, Club Shay Shay, and Cat Williams and D.L. Hughley's, Don Lemons, and then we take our power on the internet and let them know, like, yo, this is BS. We're not going to tolerate it. And this has to be addressed, because the internet is great for calling out people. And, you know, I would just love for them to call out NIPSCO. Let me say this about NIPSCO, and I hope this goes very far. I never thought it. I have a friend. He's a CEO of the, it's called Belco, the Bermuda Electric Company. And he's also the CEO of Carolec, all of the electric companies in the Caribbean. And I asked his number two person, is a woman. They had something just like this online. It's like, do you watch what goes on across the world? Because what happened in Hawaii, you know, and, you know, they send people out to Georgia, linemen. They have linemen Olympics to be the best linemen that they can be. And I would love to hear what he has to say, and maybe somebody he knows or whatever, the response that NIPSCO has given. This is a major city in a major country into a city that has changed the world because of what happened in the mid 60s and 50s. And here, you know, it's pure negligence. The DOJ has to look into that. And
yeah, I think this is it's really kind of interesting. Yeah, I think the DOJ and a whole lot of things need to be looked at, and it's just you know, it's really good. I mean, when you're talking about there was only so many news outlets, and now they've lost control of the news outlets, and it's
right.
kind of, the story kind of took a life of its own.
Yep.
And I think that may be signaling like a problem. Like, how do you damper it? I mean, the people that could be interested. And one thing I think is fascinating is that as I'm watching this on television and social media, I'm also noticing that all of the NIPSCO workers are white. I was really surprised by that. I thought that NIPSCO workers would be, you know, a mix of individuals, but the people who are in charge of the electrical grid for Garry, Indiana, do not look like the residents of Garry, Indiana. That struck me as quite fascinating. Anyway, we're almost at the top of the hour, Garry. Where did this time go? I just want to thank you for having this conversation with me tonight. And as we close, everybody, I really want to return and talk about something very personal. Garry, Indiana, it did raise me. And you know, so we're not just talking about a headline or a statistic. It's really like home and families and neighborhoods and teachers. All of my mom and all of my aunts and everybody, they were all teachers, and churches and businesses and memories. I mean, some of the most wonderful people in the world came from Garry, Indiana, the Jacksons, and many other people. One of my favorite actors of my absolute favorite show is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Captain Sisko, he's from Garry, Indiana, and that's my favorite show, number one show. There's no show, y'all check out Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Check out that series, because you're never ever going to see such a beautiful representation of what a Black father is about. You will see that on that show, and he outsmarted not only white people but all the aliens and everybody. So anyway, let's bring it back here tonight. Tonight we talked about power outages. This conversation was not just about electricity, I don't think. You know, I really think that this was a bigger conversation about how a community experiences all of the different things. Infrastructure deteriorates, and so many people are just left. And I got to tell you, every time it rains in Garry, the lights go out.
Really? I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, so it wasn't
Yeah.
like this is just like a new thing. It's like my mom's calling me on her cell phone saying the lights went out again. It's a regular thunderstorm, you know? So how could we not know that something like this happened? But anyway, as therapists, Garry and I, we understand this. You know, we understand what happens. You don't
988 should be lit up.
it
Really.
should be.
It should be lit up. It should
And
be
I
lit
think
up.
it just like brings me to compassion. It's something that like I'm not seeing enough of it for me, for my liking. And I have just like committed myself that I'm gonna be, I'm gonna promote compassion. That's my job. I want to promote compassion. It doesn't mean asking people who've been neglected to remain patient. You know, that's not what I'm saying. It's not giving an excuse to people who are just terrible, but it just means being intolerant. I think of intolerance so that we can protect tolerance. And compassion, I think, just asks us to understand people's pain. Accountability is so important. You know, there's no justification for being cruel to somebody, for discriminating, for indifference, all of this stuff. I am just going to champion this. And how about you, Garry? Give us your last words before we head out.
I'm going to take this time to thank you. Again, at the top of, I didn't know you were from Garry, Indiana, and you could have picked anybody, any therapist to talk about your hometown and what the heck we're going to do. I am committed with you, and as you know, I write articles, and I'm going to go to some of my editor friends, and I'm going to write Who Turned the Lights Out. Just to try to bring some of this craziness together. Here's my last thing. It's not over. And NIPSCO's CEO needs to be held accountable. And somewhere along this, there are real estate developers and the Chicago Bears involved. So when the Bears make the playoffs, that land becomes more valuable.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I really love that. And I just want to thank you for coming on here. It's been nice. I'll have to bring you back on. We'll have more conversations and other therapists. I really do feel called to like pull together therapists so that we all can have like, you know, conversations with each other like this. I really think it's really great. And we got good love from the chat here. Thank you so much. Shayla Harvin, how you doing? Glad you enjoyed. Thank you for everybody for coming in. I just want to let anybody know, if you're interested in working with me, you can go to DrAliciaWatkins.com. And of course, if you want to follow me on Instagram, Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Instagram, y'all. Be sure to do that. And of course, here's my website, DrAliciaWatkins.com. And if you're interested in working with me, be sure to do that. So I want to, and also if you want to get text messages from me about when I go live and other things, text LOVE to 87948, and then you'll stay in touch. You'll be in touch with me and all the little things that I do from time to time. So thank you very much, Garry, for being here. Goodbye, everybody.